All right, bridges and tunnels. First order of business is public speakers. Mr. Bowden.
Morning. Good afternoon. I came over the RFK bridge a couple of times in the last few weeks, and of particular interest is the placement and the design of the toll gantries where you read it. What you've done is put them in intelligent places, nowhere connected to the toll plaza. You've disconnected the idea that tolls are collected at toll plazas. That's a very, very important point because there are not very many other jurisdictions that decouple the place of collection and the words toll plazas. The gantries themselves are a very simple design and are not obtrusive and very well designed. The guide signs that are on the new Kisco Bridge, arrows per lane, which are used in New Jersey and Connecticut on a basis, should be the standard for all signs, and where existing signs can be converted to arrow per lane up by just changing the arrow, it's important. Holly, if I might get your attention for a moment. There needs to be coordination between New York City DOT, MTA, Bridges and Tunnel, and New York State DOT. As Governor Cuomo has said about Penn Station, we have to be in charge of it. Amtrak can't be in charge of Penn Station because they don't know our problems. Likewise, there has to be very close coordination and between New York City DOT and MTA. You're the people that have to make the decisions about road lines, guide signs, traffic, decisions like that. It can't be left to New York State. They're not here. They're like Amtrak somewhere else. And they make a lot of mistakes. How you're going to take control, excuse me, how you're going to take control of the design of your streets is something I don't understand. But without question, you need to make New York City consistent across all jurisdictions. Your DOT lines and signs has to be exactly the same as MTA bridge and tunnels, roads and signs. And to be, for New York State to have control of the West Side or any particular one road is no longer a viable issue. It's a very difficult problem to solve, but Governor Cuomo has been leading in promoting the economic viability of the state with the signs he's put up promoting economics. You need to follow his lead and take charge of New York City the way he's taking charge of Penn Station.
Cortez. They left?
They want to be on finance.
Oh, okay. That's the end of the public speaking. Any changes to the work plan? Nope.
No.
Approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion or a correction?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Done. Okay, I guess the next thing is a report on operations. Mr. Mulligan.
Just a few introductory remarks. Good afternoon. As you know, we have implemented cashless tolling at the Robert Kennedy Bridge on June 15th. Although the toll booths are still in the process, Although the toll booths are still in the process of demolition, last Thursday and Friday saw improved travel times. The Verrazano Narrows Bridge is the next up for cashless tolling on July 8th. As some of you may know, Bridges and Tunnel provides nesting boxes for peregrine falcons who have taken up residence in our Verrazano Narrows, Throgs Neck, and Marine Parkway bridges. We've been part of the state's nesting program for over 30 years, and this year welcome a new crop of falcon chicks, 4 at the Verrazano, 2 at Throgs Neck, and 4 at Marine Parkway. Finally, this is my final Bridges and Tunnels Committee meeting as acting president. Next month, the newly named President Cedric Fulton will bring his decades of tolling and bridge and tunnel asset management experience to MTA Bridges and Tunnels. I appreciate having the opportunity to work with the dedicated MTA Bridges and Tunnels staff, and I'm grateful for the support that they and this committee have provided during this transition. On to the report on operations.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The report on operations begins on page 19. Traffic was lower in April with 25.3 million crossings as compared to 25.5 million crossings in April 2016. This represents a 0.5% decrease. Easy Pass volume increased by 1.7% in April 2017 as compared to April 2016, while crossings using cash and other payment methods declined 14%. Passenger car travel was at the same level as last year, and other vehicle travel declined by 6.6% from April 2016. Preliminary monthly traffic figures for May 2017 is 1.5% less than the same period last year. The Memorial Day holiday weekend, Thursday through Monday, saw more than 4 million vehicles traveling through our facilities, representing a 5.27% decrease from 2016 Memorial Day holiday weekend. Poor weekend weather contributed to the decline. As noted earlier, the RFK Bridge, the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge, started cashless tolling on June 15th. This ends the report on operations.
Safety.
The report on safety is illustrated on page 32, in which we continue to highlight our most important indicators shown at the top and bottom of tables. The report includes 12-month rolling averages of the following performance indicators. The customer collision rate for this reporting period increased from 7.78 in March 2017 to 8.0 for April 2017. This trend is higher from the April 2016 rate of 6.36. Also, the rate for injury collision remained the same, comparing March 2017 to April 2017 at 1.09. However, the injury collision rate as compared to March 2016 increased slightly from 1.03 to 1.09. Safety and Health assembled a multidisciplinary team consisting of Maintenance, Special Operations Division, Engineering, Construction, and Facility Management. This was a joint assessment effort to evaluate roadway conditions and recommend mitigations for conditions that may contribute to collisions. Findings from this assessment identified issues related to signage, line striping, and traffic patterns. This assessment focused on previously identified collision-prone areas for facilities having the most impact on collision data. During the site visits, we identified a total of 20 findings. Of these 20 findings, 16 have been corrected to date. We are actively working on the remaining items. This includes long-term recommendations which are being evaluated for implementation. We will continue to monitor corrective actions to determine the positive effects on traffic behavior and driver behavior. Dan DiCrescenzo will continue by providing an update on deployments and enforcement efforts with regard to customer safety.
Thank you, Eric. As I explained in previous committee meetings, Bridges and Tunnels uses our collision data to schedule our targeted enforcement efforts. These efforts are specifically geared toward unsafe driver behaviors, which is the cause of many of these collisions. For the period of April 2017, year-to-date, 5,160 summonses were issued by Bridge and Tunnel officers targeting unsafe driver behavior. Of these, 2,902 summonses were issued for disobeyed traffic control device and unsafe lane changes. These two categories combined are up 28.3% from the same period in 2016. Through year-to-date April 2017, as compared with the same period last year, we have seen an increase of 26.4% of total summonses issued, 10,897 summonses in 2016 versus 13,778 in 2017, and a 17.9% increase in arrests by our officers, 142 April year-to-date in 2016 versus 173 April year-to-date 2017. For April alone, there were 564 speeding summonses issued as compared to 704 in April 2016. In recent months, this category is trending upward. We also issued in April 222 summonses for cell phone, electronic device use as compared to 148 in April of 2016. Sure. Cell phones and speeding? Okay. Cell phone, 222 summonses versus 148 for April 2016. Then speeding summonses also? Okay, sorry. In addition, MTA Bridges and Tunnels has taken additional steps regarding our collision reduction and safety plan. We conduct weekly reviews of collisions, focusing on our previous weekend collision statistics. These weekly meetings are headed by our Bridge and Tunnel President and has our facility management teams from operations, maintenance, engineering, and safety and health. This review consists of identifying collision locations, times of collisions, the apparent contributing factors, and what mitigation measures were taken and/or can be taken. We also continue to hold our monthly collision task force meetings in addition to our now quarterly Acrobat or Achieving Collision Reduction on Bridge and Tunnel meetings, reviewing collision trends and collision mitigation actions authority-wide. Pat Parisi will now present an update on collision data.
Okay. The following slides will present some additional data for the previous 12 months with regard to types, factors, and time of day. More than one-half of the collisions, 54.5%, for this period were rear-end type collisions. And the factors cited in over 43% of these collisions was following too closely. Driver inattention may be underrepresented due to the fact that the determination that an accident is driver inattention is based on the driver's admission, witness statements, officer observation. However, in most instances, the officer arrives after the accident, and most drivers do not admit inattention. So some of the following too closely collisions could easily fall into the driver inattention category. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates that 25 to 30% of police-reported collisions involve driver distraction. This chart depicts the time period distribution of collisions for this period. As you can see, midday has 28.6% of the collisions for this period. While traffic volume generally decreases during this period, vehicle speeds at some locations are increasing as the AM peak traffic breaks and temporary work zones are being created to facilitate off-peak construction work and maintenance with traffic pattern shifts. Law enforcement uses this data to strategically deploy resources, as Dan previously discussed. This chart is depicting the contributions to change for the different time periods. The midday period contributing to nearly 35% of the growth in accidents over the past 12 months. Overall, the non-peak, midday, and evening periods are contributing a disproportionate 55% of the increase in collisions. As part of mitigation, we will continue to increase efforts to address unsafe and dangerous driving behavior and deploy resources strategically. Use variable message signs as well as fixed signage to alert motorists of the dangers of distracted driving and any hazards ahead. We reviewed work zones and softened tapers and adjusted barriers to provide the safest possible merges. And we will continue to use delineation to channelize areas where we're experiencing a high number of collisions from unsafe lane changes. Pass it back to Eric Osnes to complete the safety report.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, could I ask some questions about that? I'm curious, well, I'm going to pick one particular bridge just because I drove across it last night. Are we aware of any accidents that have occurred on the Triborough while we're removing those toll plazas?
You mean over this weekend?
Yeah. I would appreciate to know that. I have to tell you, driving across it last night to come in, I was disheartened by what felt like a poor signage to understand which lane was open and which wasn't, and cars were literally just coming to a complete stop from 30 or 40 miles an hour because they couldn't figure out which lane was open and which wasn't, and it was a little disconcerting. I was coming into Manhattan across, when you bear right as you come from the Bronx, and it was really disorienting. Manhattan Plaza, so. Right. Okay.
No. The employee lost time injury rate increased slightly from 7.5 March 2017 to 7.6 in April 2017. This is higher than the March rate of 5.4. The construction injury lost time rate decreased from 2.26 from March 2016 to 1.96 from April 2017. In terms of employee lost time injury rate, we are currently reviewing several years of incident data, analyzing based on population to determine trends specific to the type and cause of injury. That ends the safety report.
It has been my unofficial role, I guess, on this committee to raise safety issues, and unfortunately I have to announce that the dubious distinction that we've hit now 8 collisions per million vehicle miles in this last month. That's a 38% increase since the November 15, which is the oldest book we have in our binder. Traffic has gone up only 3% during that same period. And you guys have done everything you've said today, Daniel and Patrick and Eric, are all the things I would expect you to do. You'd look at all the conditions and you'd set out clarifications and you are dissecting the data in a thoughtful way, and yet it is not helping. Maybe when you dissect it by locations it is, but overall these statistics are uncomfortable, unsettling, and frankly not acceptable. ORT came after the start of this trend. In fact, if I go to when ORT started really being done, with the exception of Henry Hudson, we had a 29% increase in collisions. So it is not ORT that we can blame. Nor do I feel comfortable blaming the American population's obsession with text messaging, because, as I understand from many other municipalities, they're not seeing the same level of increase. I do not know how to tell you to get rid of this problem, to solve it, but I know we must solve it. And I appreciate Tim and your predecessor Don's focus on it. But yet again, whatever we are doing is not changing the trajectory. In fact, if anything, it is getting worse. And I do not know if it's acceptable to blame ORT or text messaging or other exogenous factors on this, or other things that are unrelated to the inexorable trend that you are experiencing at the various crossings. The one thing I can ask you to do for this committee, and I know we tend not to want to change our statistics related to safety, I would like us, and Mr. Chair, I'd like your support of this, to start showing by crossing a series of stats so we can actually see where these are rising and falling. You clearly collect this information. We are not seeing it. We're hearing you report it. And I really do need to have a better sense of this, because at this point, I don't think I can take any more word for it that we're doing everything we can. This is not a personal question, not directed at each of you and any of you individually, but the stats are frightening. And as a father of a woman who's about to start driving, I am particularly focused on that. As we start driving across the Throgs Neck Bridge to enjoy the summer in Long Island, I really do expect us to find a different way to attack this problem. And at least as a board member, all I can do is look at the data. And so I ask you to bring us the more granular version, not on a one-off, but on a consistent month-by-month basis so we can all look at the data. And I'm happy to raise this to Ronnie and to David as well, but I do believe we need to in this case, because 38% over the course of a year and a half is literally unacceptable.
We will do that.
Let me ask you to add to that one thing. You have, I believe, one of your officers is in charge of management protection of traffic. Who is that? Or don't you even know? One of your predecessors said there was such a job, and it's gone now. And the question I have for you that follows up on that, can you give us, over the course of a year on a month-by-month, bridge-by-bridge and tunnel-by-tunnel basis, the number of summonses that were issued for lane change and for speeding and for being too close to the car in front of you. Those three categories, which as I understand it, are your major categories of problem. If you have that data and can provide it, it might give you some information to do. All right? Anyone else? Easy Pass.
The Easy Pass performance report will be covered as part of the ORT revenue collections presentation, which will follow the financial report. So I'll jump into the financial report, which begins on page 40. Toll revenue, year-to-date toll revenue in April was $580.5 million, which is 0.3% or $1.9 million below budget, due to a greater number of lower tolled Easy Pass transactions compared to higher tolled cash and tolls by mail transactions than initially forecasted. Traffic year-to-date in April was 93.9 million crossings, which was 1.1% better than budget. Preliminary traffic and revenue numbers for May are running below budget, about 3.3% and 1.5% for revenue and traffic respectively. The revenue variance is due to a lower average toll resulting from higher Easy Pass market shares. Total expenses were $150.7 million through April, which is about $10.7 million or 6.6% lower than budget. Labor costs were 7.8% less than budget, or $7.6 million, due primarily to vacancies. Non-labor costs through April were 4.8%, or $3.1 million lower than budget, primarily due to the timing of maintenance and other operating contracts. Our overtime year-to-date was over budget by about $400,000, primarily due to the timing of reimbursement of costs for ongoing work in the capital program. Our support to mass transit was more than $345 million in April, which is $25.1 million or 7.8% better than planned. This concludes the financial report for April. Unless there is any questions, I'm handing off the presentation on ORT revenue collections to Peg Terry and Dory Abrams. Okay.
Thank you, Mildred. Good afternoon. Before we talk about how we're doing with the money, let's go through the collection and enforcement process for tolls by mail customers who cross the facility without an Easy Pass tag and constitute the vast majority of our toll violators. We take an image of the license plate, get owner information from DMV, send the toll bill to the registered owner, and give her 30 days to pay. If the owner doesn't pay, we send her a second toll bill and give her another 30 days to pay. An owner gets 60 days to pay before we send a notice of violation with a $100 violation fee per violation for the major crossings and a $50 fee at the Henry Hudson and Rockaway bridges. The owner gets another 30 days to pay before we send her violations to a collection agency. Under DMV's new regulation, TBTA can ask DMV to suspend the vehicle registrations of an owner who has 3 or more unpaid tolls and violation fees for transactions on different days, or for commercial owners, $200 or more in unpaid tolls and fees. TBTA officers and the state police use license plate recognition cameras to match vehicles crossing the facility with a list from the DMV of vehicles whose registrations have been suspended for toll violations. We stop them, issue summonses, and impound their vehicles. Now I hand it over to Dory Abrams.
Good afternoon. So one of the ways to mitigate the potential for toll evasion is to encourage Easy Pass usage. We've done this through a variety of programs over the years, but most recently we're engaged in a strategic marketing program targeted at the facilities as each rolls out and goes live with ORT. This table shows the average 2016 market share by facility for the whole year and the average year-to-date through April in 2017. And we see here that the top facility this year is the Hugh Carey Tunnel at 94.7%. That's growth of 4 points over the average in 2016. And the Henry Hudson is the second highest this year. However, they were the highest last year at 93.5%. And the Henry Hudson was the highest starting in 2011 when we began the all-electronic tolling pilot in January of 2011 by removing the gates. And that was the first year they inched up to first place. And they stayed there through 2016. They were there in first place when we went cashless in November of 2012 and then ORT in November of 2016. But now that both of those facilities are operating in an ORT environment, the Hugh Carey has once again moved up to the top spot. The Queens Midtown isn't far behind, and they showed very strong growth, 3.4 points over the average in 2016. And then we have the Rockaway crossing. So, these crossings, as they roll out with ORT, are showing sizable growth in Easy Pass market share, and we believe the marketing campaign we have going has been contributing to that. Overall, facility-wide, we're almost at 88%, and that's 2 points above last year.
Mr. Zuckerman?
Maybe we've covered this in the past. Can you just give us the demographic or behavioral reasons why there's such variation? Is there a reason why the Whitestone has such a low percentage and the Hugh Carey is such a high percentage? I mean, I realize it's a 10-point spread, but that feels like after, I don't know, how many decades? 2 decades of Easy Pass? 15 years of Easy Pass? Seems like it's been
since 1996. So yeah.
Okay, right,
Yeah,
2 decades.
years,
Right,
yeah.
that was a good guess. 2 decades. So, what's the reason?
Well, a big part of the Bronx crossings have always lagged from the very beginning, and over the years we've run focus groups on that, and really the number one reason seems to be the prepaid nature of Easy Pass. So having to, based on your usage, you're hit with $75, $80, so having to pay that much up front at one time discourages some customers from moving towards Easy Pass. We have programs that have directly addressed that situation, and believe it or not, we have seen substantial growth after those programs, but they're still lagging behind. So.
Could trucks be a factor? All those above Cross Bay are no trucks, and the ones below are all trucks.
That's a good point. Yes, the Bronx Whitestone, the Throgs Neck, the Verrazano, they're heavy truck facilities, and trucks have a remarkably high Easy Pass usage market share. Yeah.
Let me ask you another question. Have you been able thus far to track whether or not we are losing money by reason of ORT?
The best is yet to come.
Okay.
All right, so if we move on to the next slide.
Question about this page. My assumption is where it says Easy Pass market share, that includes anybody who has a prepaid, what's the word I use? Transponder. That wasn't the word, but that's a good word. So it doesn't matter from what state they're in, it doesn't matter where they live, as long as they got something, we count them as that.
That's correct. Yeah.
But the only people who get the reduced toll charge are New York State transponders.
The transponders registered with the New York Customer Service Center.
Right. Okay.
Now, if you live in Pennsylvania and you want to register your tag with the New York Customer Service Center, you will get the discount.
Okay.
The lower toll.
All right. So that's the correct way to phrase it. But that, as long as you're registered with that. So in reality, what that ends up with is, while the people in 2 different states have the same transponder and get the same speed benefit of going through the toll with Easy Pass, they don't get the same cash benefit.
Yes.
Right, because one pays a reduced, you're almost to the point where the Easy Pass toll is the real toll.
Absolutely.
The additional toll is almost a, let's see, I don't want to use the word penalty, surcharge, almost. It's really a surcharge for not having an Easy Pass. Now, in reality, that's what you end up with. So when we have these conversations about what the toll really is, the toll really is not $8.50, $8.75, what's it today?
It's what, 88,
Right,
80%.
that's what I'm saying. It's really six, whatever we're paying. Right, $5.76.
Right.
That's the real toll. The $8.50 is an artificial toll based upon the fact that you don't have an Easy Pass registered with the New York State Customer Service Center. Do we have any idea what percentage of, let's take the ULK, well, I would assume that different facilities have different percentages of people registered with the New York State Customer Service Center because some of these are more interstate than otherwise. I would assume the UL Carry would most likely have a significantly higher percentage of people who are in the New York Customer Service Center than, say, the Throgs Neck.
I would have to look into that. We do keep statistics on an overall basis. We haven't looked at it facility by facility in a while, but we could do that for sure. But it does vary. You're correct.
It does vary.
Yes, absolutely.
So different people paying at different places pay different toll rates in reality.
Yeah, I mean it's based on the trip, so
right.
It's not. The Easy Pass accounts aren't facility specific, but the people using them are.
They're using them at different.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. As Neil's issue on the demographics based on facility, there's also demographics based on New York or other states in that regard.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
And do you also have a differentiation between the trucks and the automobiles? Because many of the truckers are occasional, whereas, or the panel trucks are occasional rather than the daily commuter.
You mean the difference between where commercial accounts are registered?
Correct.
We do have that data, yes.
You have that data?
Yeah, and the last time we looked at that, the pattern was remarkably close to passenger vehicles. There wasn't a huge difference between the proportion of trips, taken by New York Customer Service Center accounts versus not.
All right.
Yeah.
Next.
Okay. So the next slide talks or shows the revenue collection story from 2016 at the Henry Hudson, and this is for the whole year. And so 67.2 million in Easy Pass tolls were transacted, and 8.7 million in tolls by mail were billed for a total revenue. For a total revenue collection pool of 75.9 million. And we collected 99.5% of the Easy Pass tolls that we transacted, but we collected around 2/3, 66% of the tolls by mail billed. The total collection rate for the year at the Henry Hudson was 95.7%. And so just moving down to the violation fees. So what this line is saying is, of the 66, the 2/3 of the tolls by mail transactions that were billed, 10% were paid at the violation level, which means they were also assessed the $50 violation fee. So that revenue stream came to $6.2 million. And the total fees and tolls collected total $78.9 million, which was 104% of the tolls that we transacted and billed.
I'm sorry, what month in 2016 did open road tolling begin on
November.
Do you have any, I'm sorry, do you,
But we were cashless before then.
Right.
So.
do you have any projections as to what impact trucks will make on these kind of numbers? In other words, will the presence of trucks on the RFK dilute, increase, or maintain the same kind of equation?
Mm-hmm. We're very concerned about that. We're hoping that the technology and everything will hold and that the collection rates will be similar to passenger vehicles. We're going to be monitoring it very closely as we proceed.
When you start collecting some data on it, we'd like to have it reported.
We will, absolutely.
Any other questions, comments?
We have one more page that actually goes to the early data that we have from the tunnels, because the real question is, we know about the Henry Hudson baseline, and we know what the experience is there. And the remaining question, because of the demographic difference, because of Easy Pass market share difference, and because of truck use difference on the other facilities, throws in more risk and variability. So this is using the first few months of data from the tunnels to say how similar or dissimilar is the early months collection experience of the tunnels to the Henry Hudson baseline that we know well. Dory?
Okay, so right. So this is looking at the current sort of revenue collection cycle, right? Because of the long process associated with tolls by mail collections, you know, as Tim was saying, it's kind of early to fully assess the tunnels, but based on what we've seen so far in 2017, results are looking very similar to the Henry Hudson. So the Henry Hudson is the blue line on the bottom here, and we see at the beginning, the very beginning of the collection cycle, the collection rate is just under 90%, and by the time we get to the end of the current collection cycle, it's hovering around 100%. And so the tunnels look very, very similar. The two tunnels themselves are tracking very closely with one another. The Hugh Carey tunnel is a little bit better than the Queens Midtown because it has a higher Easy Pass market share. And I should say that the reason, you know, it's like 88 to 92% collection rate at the beginning, it's mostly because of Easy Pass, right? Because most of the transactions are Easy Pass, and we get them. But on the tolls by mail, a lot of them haven't either been billed or we haven't collected on them yet. But as we move, you know, to the right towards a more mature point in the collection cycle, all three facilities are hovering around 100%, which is really encouraging. And so we'll be tracking each facility this way as they come online month by month. We'll be looking at trucks for sure. And unless there are any questions, that ends our presentation.
Veronica?
Last month, Mr. Mulligan talked about interstate compact agreement discussions that were underway. Anything to report?
Yes, there was a discussion with New Jersey, and Peg can fill us in more, but there appears to be a statutory obstacle in New Jersey similar to the one that exists in Connecticut. So we're going to have to continue to work, you know, through the DMV office in Albany and through those conversations to try and resolve, because obviously those two markets are very important to these efforts.
In addition, there have been ongoing discussions with Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. We're working on the practical details of how data will be transmitted to the out-of-state DMV. We've exchanged several drafts of the underlying agreements. So we are, in fact, proceeding on these fronts with the obstacles that Tim has mentioned.
Anybody else? Program?
The report on the capital program begins on page 54. In May, there were 23 commitments made in the amount of $103 million. Year-to-date, 98 commitments have been made with a total value of $394.1 million, which is approximately 75% of our $527.7 million annual planned commitments. The $394.1 million in commitments compares to a planned year-to-date amount of $351.8 million. The most significant commitment made in May was the award of a design-build contract to rehabilitate the substructures of the Henry Hudson Bridge in the amount of $85.7 million. There were 6 task-level completions in May for an aggregate value of $393.5 million. This primarily consisted of several major completions at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, which included replacement of the upper-level roadway deck and a new bus HOV ramp. Both of these projects were completed ahead of schedule. Year-to-date, approximately $400 million in project completions have been made, and this represents approximately 75% of our annual completion plan of $527.4 million. There were 7 task closeouts for $170,000 in May. Year-to-date, there have been 46 closeouts for $88.7 million. Unless there are any questions, that concludes the report.
Good afternoon. Procurement start on page 71. There are no non-competitive procurements or ratifications. There are 8 competitive procurement actions this month in the amount of $40.037 million. There's an award of a competitively solicited miscellaneous service contract to design, upgrade, and maintain a roadway weather information system in the negotiated amount of $3,566,609. There's an award of a competitively solicited personal service contract in order to provide design and construction support services for RK-20, main bridge cable inspection and rehabilitation at the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge in the negotiated amount of $1,367,570. There is an amendment to a personal service contract to provide additional support and technical consulting services for toll collection and toll violation enforcement at all authority facilities to support open road tolling in the not-to-exceed amount of $2 million. There is also an amendment for a purchase contract to the license plate recognition system in order to strengthen safety, security, and law enforcement efforts in the amount of $1,626,235. Finally, there are 4 public work modifications mainly associated with plaza transformation coordinated with open road tolling. The first one at the UL Carry Tunnel for lighting and electrical power distribution upgrades and quantity increases to the fire standpipe insulation in the negotiated amount of $11,531,318. The second one is at the Queens Midtown Tunnel to fabricate, furnish, and install tower structures and provide milling and permanent paving of the Queens Plaza in the negotiated amount of $9,800,000. The third one is at the Marine Parkway and Cross Bay Bridges to purchase long lead time lighting, electrical materials, as well as the purchase of 2 new transformers for the lift span in a negotiated amount of $6,479,010.06, inclusive of $2 million to commence installation. The fourth and final modification is at the RFK Bridge to fabricate, furnish, and install tower structures on the Manhattan Plaza and to construct foundations on the Bronx Plaza in a negotiated amount of $3,665,502. The total amount committed for these modifications is $35.102 million. Unless there are any questions, these procurements are described in detail in the enclosed staff summaries.
Questions? One quick one. I noticed that you have a couple of SAIs here. When was the last time, to your recollection, that a significant adverse incident was not waived?
Off the top of my head, I can't recall one, but there is a very extensive vetting process that goes through.
The process.
Yeah.
You know can you cite any case in the last 5 years where you didn't have a waiver at the end of it?
Commissioner, not off the top of our head, but we have an extended database on this. We will check and get back to you.
Thank you.